Belena had a restless sleep the night before, something which Lorik couldn't stand, which led him to sleeping on the table next to their bed. It had been 3 months since Valerie had passed away, give or take a few days, and winter had finally come. The first snowfall of the season blanketed the ground, and it was a perfect setting for a momentous day. This was a day of change, and Lorik wasn't sure he was ready. He had just become part of the family, and it felt like he was losing them all. Alban had argued about his decision with the children, and he was adamant about it. It took a while to convince them all, and Lorik wasn't sure if Valden was content yet, but Valden and Sylvie had come to accept it. Alban needed this. Lorik knew that. He knew from his own experience how lost he would be without Belena at his side. In the months since his abdication, the 3 children all shared in the rule of Vandan, their father being a guide to them whenever they needed help with the unfamiliar and the trying task of governing the lands. Valden's decision to leave caught on with Sylvie, and she begged him to take her again, but he was set on going alone this time. He had told her this time it wasn't because he hated being with her. The two had actually grown quite close since their travels, but he said this trip was different. He was leaving to build a new life, away from royalty. Deep down, Sylvie probably knew she couldn't leave her status behind. Being a full-sized giant, she was more tied to this place than he was. Despite this, Lorik wondered if she was still going to join him regardless. She was a bit stubborn despite her recent maturity. Belena had taken hold of the reins more than the others. She seemed to gravitate towards the role of a leader more than either of her siblings did, which led to this morning. Everyone agreed, once they realized that Valden and Sylvie might be leaving, that Belena would be crowned the sole Queen of Vandan. The coronation would take place today, and it would be the last time Alban would do something public in Vandan, or even give advice for leadership. He would depart for Alban after the ceremony. Along with the coronation, the citizens and the children had worked tirelessly at creating a life-size statue of Valerie that would be located outside the walls of the city, and it would be unveiled today. This all led to Belena's sleepless night and Lorik's nerves being shot. His wife would be queen. But did that mean he had to be king? Surely not. Or at least he had hoped not. He would support Belena in any way he could. But ruling Vandan was just not in his blood. It wasn't like she needed help ruling anyways. Some movement made Lorik jump a bit, but he calmed down once he realized Belena had finally given up on sleeping and was ready to face the day. She smiled when she saw her husband, and gently took hold of him.
Good morning, my love. Did you get any sleep?
A little more than you, I think, he said, rubbing her warm but strong fingers. He never tired of his intimate moments with her, whether it was their morning greetings or their time just before bed. Any moment with her was pure bliss, like nothing he had ever imagined before. She gently kissed him, smothering him with her soft lips, and he kissed her bottom lip back. She opened her palm and let him sit down as she sat back on the head of her bed. Are you ready, Belena? Do you think you need more time?
I've been the acting ruler for a while now, Lorik. Being crowned, it's scary, only because it's official.
Well, that's not true. You'll be the only queen, and you won't have a king.
I'll have you, dear,
she said, smiling. Lorik shifted a bit on her palm. Belena, what good will I be able to do? I barely know what it takes to be a husband. How could I help you lead?
Your support does wonders for me. I know that sounds just like a platitude, but really it means the world to me that you're here whenever I need you.
Of course, Belena. I'd never leave you to do anything alone. I just doubt myself. That's all there is to it.
I do too. We can do this though. Just like I know deep down I can be queen. I'll never be like my mom, but I can be me.
She tousled a strand of her hair for a bit, waiting to say something. Lorik caught on and decided to pry. Do you have anything else to say, dear?
Funny you should ask. I was thinking, well, the house will be quite empty. What if, Lorak, do you think we should be parents?
Lorak's heart skipped a beat, and he fell backwards onto her lap, his head spinning. Parents? She rested her elbows on her knees and leaned towards him.
I think it would be fun. I know it's a lot to think about with everything else, but think it's nearly time we considered it.
I mean, Belena, I'd love to be a father, but there's just so much to think about. We don't know anything about raising kids, and what if they're giant-sized like you?
Dad managed. I'm sure he can give you advice when we visit him. Just think about it, all right? You won't be raising them alone. It will be a team effort, and anything we set our minds to, we can achieve, right?
Well, yes.
All right then. Put some thought into it, and you can decide later. For now, I need to get dressed.
Alban looked up from his desk when he heard a knock on the open door. Valden stood there, dressed in his fanciest clothes for the coronation. Aren't you going to get ready, Dad? The courtyard is nearly packed, and Belena's been ready for quite a while. I know, I just need to... There. Alban put his quill down and beckoned his son closer. Valden looked at the cover of the book Alban was in front of and smiled. The Princess of Vandan and the Children of Vandan by King Alban, son of Mildar. What do you plan on doing with these? I'll keep them for now. Share them with anyone who will listen. They chronicle your mother and I's first meeting, our marriage, and of course you three. I did my best to write about what you and Sylvie did during your adventure, so forgive me if the details are not accurate. I'm sure it's wonderful. Valden flipped through the book and noticed another one next to it. The Chronicles of Vandan. What's that one? A story in the making. It covers the invasion of Elgon and my recent voyage. I still can't believe you and your sisters fought a horde of ogres and an invading army as well. And I wasn't there to see it. And I'm sure you were wonderful too. I wish you'd have been there. It wasn't easy, defeating Argo. And the damage he did to our city will not be mended quickly. Best be rid of him. I never did like him. Belena said you found him favorable at first. Well, I'm not always a good judge of character at first. Obviously. Alban stowed the first book away, but handed the other book to Valden. What? Finish it. They're chronicles, son. They're meant to be continued. Are you sure? Definitely. Now get going, will you? As you said. I need to change into something more appropriate. Rays of light glistened off the snow-covered grounds of the courtyard, and the entire town of Rismark stood on either side of the walkway to the castle doors. Trumpets blasted, then they slowly opened. The soon-to-be queen finally revealed. She wore a white gown and robe that were as brilliant and as marvelous as the snow, and on her shoulders sat Lorak. Her hair was tied into a ponytail, and it was braided with ribbons carefully attached. Lorak had told her she looked more gorgeous than on their wedding day, but she disagreed. On the other end of the courtyard, in the gates that led to Rismark, Sylvie stood in a red dress while her blonde hair flowed freely down her back. Valden sat on her shoulder, and in her hands was the crown, once worn by Valerie. It was adorned with the only giant jewels left in existence, and they were surrounded in near glowing silver. Alban sat on Sylvie's opposite shoulder, his face beaming with joy. Tears fell down his cheek, partly for joy at seeing his daughter taking on such a great mantle, but partly due to sadness at knowing that he had seen this before with his late wife. Belena stopped just before Sylvie and knelt before her, bowing her head slightly. Alban cleared his throat and began his speech. Belena, my beautiful daughter, you have proved yourself to both myself and the people of Rismark that you are worthy of being the new Queen of Vandan. You have valiantly fought against great evil. You have cared for the poor and the sick, and you have held our kingdom together in its darkest hours. With this crown, you take the responsibility of protecting, aiding, and leading these lands. Do you vow to lead justly but fairly, and to lead by serving others?
I do.
Then by the power vested in me, I crown you Queen of Vandan. Sylvie placed the crown atop her head, and the crowd immediately erupted in cheers. The new queen stood and bowed to her people, her smile as wide as it could be. Once the cheering died down, Belena walked over to a large sheet and pulled it off, revealing the statue of Valerie that had been carefully carved. Belena and Sylvie had done much of the heavy lifting and shaping, but the people of Rismark put as much detail into her as possible, and the result was magnificent. At the base was a small plaque that read, Valerie, beloved wife, mother, and queen. May your memory live on forever. The new queen couldn't hold back her tears as she looked into the face of the stone image of her mother. She would always be able to see her in some way every day she came home. It was more than enough for her, short of having her back. Celebration immediately followed as the castle doors were opened and the dining room became a ballroom with stairs leading up to the tables. Belena received good wishes and many kind words from nearly every citizen, while Valden and Sylvie made sure everyone had plenty to eat and drink. Alban watched the fun from a distance, smiling as he took in the scene. His children were in his place now. He had achieved what he wanted as a father. Yet leaving would not hurt any less. He had to go, though, no matter how he felt. He had more work to do in honoring Valerie. Just as he turned to leave, he was suddenly whipped into the air, and he found himself in Belena's palm, the young queen working to fight back her tears. Sylvie joined her with Valden in hand.
You didn't think you could leave without saying goodbye, did you?
Belena said. Of course not. She brought him to her face and he kissed her cheek, then Sylvie's as she brought hers close too. Goodbye, Belena. You'll make a great queen. Goodbye, Sylvie. Stay out of trouble. Valden then hopped onto Belena and hugged his father, his breathing a little heavy as he tried not to get too emotional. I'll make you proud, Dad. You already have, son. You all have. I couldn't be happier than I am now. If your mother were here and I was gone, she'd say the same. This was our dream all along. To see you all grow up. A few more kisses later, and Alban was walking through the courtyard, the snow falling once more. As he reached the outer gates, he looked back at the statue of Valerie, her face lit from one of the windows. Goodbye, my love. We'll meet again, one day. Sylvie trudged through the snow, her boots creating footprints big enough to nearly fit an entire house in, and Valden sat comfortably on her shoulder. He sighed, watching the scenery go by before he decided to speak up. Do you think Belena and Lorik will be alright? She seemed worried about us.
Belena's strong, Valden. Besides, we both need this.
Right. You know you're not going with me, right?
Oh, I know. I just wanted to make your trip easier for you. At least until we get to where I wanted to be.
Where exactly is that?
Somewhere out west. Wherever the road takes me. You?
I'll visit the old village we traveled to before. But I intend to go further. See what life has in store for me. Sylvie nodded. Inside, she was scared for him, alone in the world. But she also wanted him to be himself and build a new life on his own. She wanted the same thing one day. But for now, she had adventure on her mind, just for the sake of it. Eventually, they reached a crossroads, one they had sat at during their original adventure. Sylvie set her hand next to her shoulder for Valden to climb in, and once he was secure, she set him next to her feet, her little brother looking so far away. She squatted down to say her goodbyes, but he pulled something out of a sack he brought first.
What's that?
It's a book that Dad made, The Chronicles of Vandan. There's 2 stories for now, but I'd like to add more. I think you can find more use from it, if you can find someone to write for you. He set the book in her palm, the thing looking smaller than a peanut to her.
Are you sure?
I'm not part of Vandan anymore. I'm off on my own now. This book belongs to you.
You'll always be part of the story, Valden. Promise to write your part?
Of course. He turned around, ready to face whatever lay before him. But he turned around and ran to her hand one last time. He hugged her thumb, feeling that warmth and protection from his little sister for the last time. For a while.
Be safe, Valden.
You too, sis. With that, he backed away and left her alone. She wiped a tear from her eyes before she looked off to the west. Her eyes lit with new passion. It was time for her own adventure.